In a world drowning in noise and blinded by power, there remains a land that refuses to kneel. A land not defended by empires, but by an unshakable spirit. A land that has stood firm while others have fallen. Scarred, but never silenced. Tonight we are not here to glorify politics or speak the language of military might. We are here to bear witness to something deeper, something sacred, something eternal. This is not just about Iran, it's about what Iran represents. It's about faith that doesn't flinch, identity that cannot be erased, and a revolution that still burns like the fire of Karbala. It's about a people who walk through sanctions with the patience of prophets, who carry the burden of resistance like a prayer on their backs, and who still, after decades of siege, raise their hands not in surrender, but in supplication. So open your heart, not just your mind, let your soul listen. Because this is more than a speech. It is a reminder that some nations are not built on fear, but on faith. That some defeats are impossible, not because of strength, but because of truth. And that the story of Iran is not just political, it is spiritual. It is a test, a trial, and a triumph. Stay with me, because by the end, you won't just understand why Iran can't be defeated, you'll feel it. Iran's geographical position is not a coincidence, it is divine design. Nestled between east and west, it stands as a gatekeeper, a corridor of consequence. To the south lies the Persian Gulf, rich with oil and blood, and beyond that, the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil flows. This waterway is not merely a stretch of sea, it is a jugular vein of the global economy. One disruption, one act of defiance, and the world trembles. And who holds the key? Iran. To its west lie Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, lands soaked in prophecy and conflict, lands where Iran's influence runs not just through politics and power, but through shared faith, shared martyrs, shared struggle. These are not random allies. They are extensions of belief bound by ideology, by history, by resistance. To the east lie Afghanistan and Pakistan, regions turbulent with unrest but within reach of Iran's ancient grasp. In the north, the borders touch Central Asia and the Caucasus, routes once walked by traders and scholars who carried not only goods, but ideas, scripture, and revolution. Iran sits at the intersection of all these roads, not just geographically, but spiritually. And although spinning a number of other weird conspiracy theories, none of them have any obvious evidence of an ending to the war. This is not accidental. Iran's geography is a form of divine armor. Empires have come and gone, drawn in by ambition, but broken by terrain. The Zagros Mountains in the west are natural fortresses protecting the heartland. The deserts in the center form a crucible of endurance, teaching the people patience, humility, and survival. It is a land designed to make its people unbreakable, not merely by force, but by faith. The Quranic concept of istiqamah, steadfastness, lives in the soil of Iran. When enemies surround it, when sanctions suffocate it, when isolation tightens like a noose, Iran does not collapse. It adapts. Because its geography demands it, because its land has trained its people to bend but never break. Its strategic location means that any foreign aggression risks not a war, but a wildfire. No Western nation can strike Iran without awakening multiple fronts, because to strike Iran is to provoke a regional chain reaction. Iran's military doesn't need to match the West in technology or numbers. It only needs to hold the choke point, to ignite the right pressure points, and the consequences ripple across the world. And so Iran's geography is not just terrain, it is testimony. A testimony to resilience, a proof that some lands are chosen not for comfort, but for challenge. Not to retreat, but to rise. Not to blend into the global order, but to stand apart from it. The soil of Iran is ancient, sacred, and defiant. And those who tread on it with arrogance often find themselves stumbling over their own strategy. Because Iran does not stand at the edge of the world, it stands at the center of the test. Iran does not rely on tanks alone, nor on the size of its army. Its true power lies in the unseen, the unexpected, the art of asymmetric warfare. This is a warfare of the prophets, of the oppressed rising with stones against swords, of David against Goliath. It is not about might, but meaning. It is the battle of faith against arrogance, of will against wealth, of strategy over strength. And Iran has mastered it like scripture. When confronted by superior forces, Iran does not retreat, it adapts. When surrounded by enemies, it does not despair, it expands, not through borders, but through belief, not through invasions, but through influence. In Lebanon, there is Hezbollah, a movement of faith and resistance, born not in the halls of power, but in the prayers of the oppressed. It is a flame that Iran helped light, not for conquest, but for dignity. In Iraq, the Popular Mobilization Forces stand as a testament to how faith can form an army without uniforms, without ranks, yet with more discipline and devotion than any military machine. In Syria, in Yemen, in Gaza, you see the fingerprints of this strategy. Iran doesn't need to send legions when it can awaken lions. These are not puppets. These are partners in purpose, bound by ideology, by love for martyrdom, by a shared enemy who seeks to erase their identity and faith. The Quran teaches that they plot and Allah plots, and Allah is the best of plotters. Iran's strategy reflects this divine wisdom. Where its enemies build empires of iron, Iran builds networks of loyalty. Where others drop bombs, Iran plants seeds. Seeds of resistance that grow in refugee camps, in sermons, in whispered prayers under occupation. Its weapons are not just missiles, they are stories of Karbala, stories of Hussein, stories that remind the weak that their suffering is not in vain, that their struggle is sacred. Iran's proxy network is not a military alliance. It is a spiritual one. These movements are fueled not by salary, but by sacrifice. They do not fear death because they do not live for this world. And this terrifies the West. Because how do you defeat a fighter who seeks martyrdom? How do you conquer a people who see struggle as a pathway to paradise? The Western mind, grounded in materialism, cannot comprehend the soul of this resistance. It is not logical to them, but it is deeply logical to those who live with divine purpose. This is Iran's battlefield, a field of hearts, of ideas, of unwavering belief. Its victories are not declared in press conferences, but written in the perseverance of the poor, the courage of the outnumbered, the defiance of the faithful. Iran has turned every front into a spiritual front, and that is a war no drone can win. It is a war of time, of truth, of tawakkul, reliance on God. While its enemies chase the illusion of domination, Iran nurtures a network that sees beyond the material, a network that bleeds but does not break, a network that prays before it fights, and fights knowing the prayer is already answered. And Iran's strength does not begin on the battlefield or in the halls of government. It begins in the soul of its people. It begins with a spirit carved by centuries of struggle and sanctified by sacrifice. Iran is not merely a country, it is a revolution wrapped in the skin of a nation. Its identity is not built upon borders, but upon belief. The Islamic Republic was not born from convenience, it was born from martyrdom, from defiance. From the echo of Karbala, its foundation was not laid by kings, but by scholars and students, by those who rose with Quran in one hand and resistance in the other. This is not politics, it is purpose. The West misunderstands this entirely. It sees Iran through the lens of power politics, as if it were just another regime. But Iran sees itself through the lens of destiny. Its revolution was not merely an event of 1979, it was a continuation of a sacred legacy. From the stand of Imam Hussein at Karbala to the voices of the oppressed throughout history, Iran carries a message: resistance is worship. This message lives in the hearts of its youth, not just in speeches or slogans. It lives in their mourning for the martyrs, in their passion for Ashura, in their fasting, their prayer, their refusal to kneel before tyranny. This revolutionary ideology is not a weapon, it is an immune system. Sanctions may cripple the economy, assassinations may cut down leaders, but they cannot erase the fire of faith. Iran's enemies have tried to isolate it, to suffocate it, to turn its people against it. But what they fail to see is that hardship, in this context, only deepens conviction. When the Prophet was under siege in Mecca, did he surrender? When Imam Hussein stood alone in the desert, did he compromise? Iran people carry this inheritance. They do not view struggle as failure. They view it as fidelity to God, to justice, to truth. This national identity is wrapped in a sense of divine mission. Every child who grows up under pressure learns that his dignity is not for sale. Every woman who wears her hijab under hostile eyes learns that submission belongs to God alone. Every soldier who stands with tears in his eyes at the shrine of a martyr understands that his life is not his own. It is a trust, a sacred loan. This is the fabric of Iran's defiance, not hatred but hope, not arrogance but adherence to a higher law. The revolution survives because it is not based on personality. It is based on principle. Its leaders come and go, but its spirit remains because it is rooted in faith. And faith does not die under bombs. It does not yield under embargo. It only grows when tested. Iran's enemies try to break its will, but will forged in the furnace of faith does not shatter. It only sharpens. This is why Iran's identity cannot be dismantled. It is not held together by fear, but by fervor. It is a people who have chosen the path of God, knowing it is steep, knowing it is long, but walking it anyway, because they believe what every true believer knows. The end belongs not to the oppressors, but to the patient, the steadfast, the sincere. Iran's economy has been under siege for decades, not by accident, but by design. Sanctions, restrictions, blacklists, all intended to starve the nation into surrender. Yet Iran has not collapsed. It has not crumbled. It has endured. And more than that, it has adapted, because an economy that is guided by faith and resilience is not built only on numbers and trade deals. It is built on patience, creativity, and reliance upon Allah. Where others see crisis, Iran sees opportunity to strengthen itself from within. Where others measure success in GDP, Iran measures it in independence and resistance. A nation that has been cut off from the global financial system, forbidden from normal commerce, isolated from banks and markets, still moves forward. This is not normal economics. This is economic jihad. Iran's ability to survive is not just due to clever policies. It is due to a culture of defiance, a culture born in the hearts of people who believe that hardship is a test, not a punishment. Allah says in the Quran, "Indeed, with hardship comes ease." Iran lives that ayah every single day. With every new round of sanctions, it develops a new system. When oil exports are blocked, it finds new buyers or new ways of barter. When banking channels are shut down, it turns to non-Western systems. When doors close in the West, it opens others in the East, with China, Russia, Venezuela, and neighbors willing to stand outside of Washington's control. But even more powerful than trade routes or currency swaps is the mindset of resistance. Iranian leaders have taught their people to value self-sufficiency, to see independence from foreign powers not as loss, but as liberation. This is not just economic survival, it is economic purification. It is the rejection of a world order that demands submission to arrogance and materialism. Iran's resistance economy is built upon the Islamic principle of Gina spiritual wealth. Even when material wealth is scarce, spiritual wealth remains abundant. Iran produces its own medicine, it builds its own drones, it harvests its own crops, it develops its own scientific research. Even under sanctions, it educates millions, not just to serve corporations, but to serve the nation and the Ummah. This is not a poor nation waiting to be saved. It is a dignified nation choosing to struggle on its own terms. Iran is showing the Muslim world that you do not have to bow to the IMF, to the dollar, to the capitalist machine. You can rise with your own hands, guided by your own values. While the West uses wealth as a weapon, Iran turns scarcity into strength. While others fear economic collapse, Iran sees it as a path to self-discovery, to reliance on Allah alone. The market may shrink, but the soul expands. The imports may slow, but the innovation increases, because when a nation walks in the path of God, even the closed doors become signs. Even the hunger becomes a blessing. Even the blockade becomes a blessing. Iran is not simply a country with borders drawn by modern politics. It is a civilization with roots that stretch deeper than empire, deeper than conquest, deeper than even the rise and fall of nations. It is a land where prophets walked, where poets wept, where scholars wrote under candlelight long before the Western world knew the meaning of knowledge. Iran's people do not see themselves as part of a passing moment. They see themselves as guardians of a legacy that began long before the colonial maps were drawn. They are not just citizens of a state. They are heirs to a sacred history. And this history, this civilizational depth, gives them a resilience that cannot be measured in weapons or wealth. It is the resilience of a people who know that their identity does not depend on anyone's recognition, but on divine truth. When a nation has a memory that stretches back over 2,500 years, it does not break easily. Iran remembers the invasions of Alexander, the wrath of Genghis Khan, the crusades of colonial empires. It remembers the fall of dynasties, the betrayal of allies, the treachery of tyrants. Yet it still stands, not as a ghost of the past, but as a living force in the present. It carries its language, its culture, its faith, not as museum pieces, but as living truths passed down through generations. This gives its people something no sanction, no isolation, no foreign pressure can take, a deep, unshakable sense of who they are and where they come from. That is not nationalism, it is sacred continuity. For a religious soul, this matters deeply. Islam does not exist in a vacuum. It grows in the soil of tradition, in the water of history, in the light of knowledge. Iran has preserved its Islamic identity not by abandoning its Persian heritage, but by allowing them to merge, to enrich each other, to strengthen the moral and intellectual character of its society. Its poets quote Quran. Its sermons echo ancient wisdom. Its cities carry the names of saints and scholars. Its youth are taught not only resistance, but reverence for their past, their faith, their martyrs, and their mission. This cultural continuity is more than pride, it is protection. A people connected to their roots cannot be easily manipulated. They do not forget who they are when the world tempts them with comfort or threatens them with pain. Iran's youth, despite all efforts of foreign propaganda, still rise on the day of Ashura, still weep for Hussein, still recite du'as that have been whispered for centuries. That is not backwardness, that is loyalty. That is not extremism, that is endurance. It is the mark of a people who have been tried and tested and who have chosen again and again to remain faithful. The West cannot understand this because its own civilizations have lost their center. But Iran's people walk through markets, universities, and mosques with the silent knowledge that they are part of something eternal, and so they will not kneel because their lineage does not kneel. They will not sell their values because their ancestors bought them with blood. They will not abandon the path because the path is older than the empires that threaten them and higher than the ambitions that try to silence them. Iran is not undefeatable because of its weapons or wealth, but because of its soul. A soul shaped by sacred memory, protected by geography, powered by faith, and guided by a revolutionary spirit that does not bow to oppression. It is a nation that has turned pressure into purpose, isolation into innovation, and struggle into strength. From the peaks of its mountains to the streets of Karbala, united resistance, from its strategic mastery to its civilizational wisdom, Iran stands not just as a country, but as a testimony, a living declaration that dignity cannot be sanctioned and faith cannot be defeated. The West, with all its power, cannot understand this kind of strength because it is not written in policy papers, but in the blood of martyrs and the prayers of mothers. And that is why Iran continues to stand, not just in defiance of enemies, but in obedience to something far greater. Thank you for your time, your heart, and your open mind. May the truth always guide you. May your spirit stay firm in the face of every storm, and may you walk your path with courage, wisdom, and unwavering faith. May Allah protect you, strengthen your voice, and bless your journey with clarity and conviction. Good luck, and may you always stand on the side of justice, no matter the cost.